Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Talking God and Politics with Mark, Mike, and my beautiful wife, Denise. Mark, a lot's been going on lately.
Oh yeah, the honeymoon's over.
Yeah,
The honeymoon
I,
is
I
over.
I continue to see, unfortunately, President Trump's base that I was so much a part of declining rapidly.
Yeah,
And I would say Candace Owen is doing a great job. Ian
yeah,
Carroll and
yeah,
Stu Peters, guys like that are consistent, that are honest, and that are exposing this Trump Israel agenda that is not the America First agenda. And I posted something on Laura Loomer's thing, and it got like 10,000, 14,000 views, because she was like, I want a job with the Trump administration. And I said, well, I said, I don't think you have a hard time. I mean, if you want to be a traitor too and support Israel and go do genocide, I'm sure he's got a spot for you on the team there.
yep,
And it's dividing the party so much. And
yeah.
I don't know what he's going to be able to do to stop the bleeding. Maybe we can lead off with, the whole Houthi. Am I saying
Yeah,
that right? The Houthi,
Houthi.
the
Houthi
Houthis.
situation.
Yeah, it's typical. That's why you never put your faith in government. Never put your faith in politicians, especially when it comes to war. And the thing is, though, it's not like it's American interest at all. There is no American interest in this. In fact, what we'll jump into with the Houthis here is that they've never attacked American ships. Trump put this on his Truth Social page that what was it that they will no longer, or they will not sink another American ship.
Yeah, he was so gleeful about it. He was so excited about all these people losing their lives, and all they're doing is attacking and trying to stand up to Israel, who is committing complete genocide in the area. They're not attacking us, like you said.
Yeah,
And
they've never sunk an American ship. I mean, where does
yeah,
that's just the rhetoric that he's playing. And the look, all the libertarian folks that I follow and friends with, they're not buying this for 1 second. The problem is it's the MAGA Republicans are eating it hook, line, and sinker. It's like they almost don't care that genocide is happening and that we're fighting a war in the Middle East for Israel, and it has nothing to do with America first.
well, it comes back to this generation, actually, all kinds of generations, again, going back to Schofield, thinking that if you're an American, somehow you're a Christian. And if you're an American and you're a Christian, supporting Israel is like supporting apple pie and supporting Christianity. So even if you're not even a real Christian, but you're kind of like you think you are because you're an American,
Well,
it's so
right.
brainwashed that it's in the MAGA movement. It's baked in.
Right.
And it becomes a cult. And as Christians, we knew that we weren't gonna like idolize Trump or anything like that. We just loved his policies.
Correct.
And we really were like, yeah, he's gonna stand up to the globalists. But we've done so much research on Israel and the Rothschilds that we know who the globalists are.
Right.
And so when we see him now supporting Rothschild Zionism, we know that he's, unfortunately, from everything that he's doing, he is one of them. And let me just break some news here. I was watching Stu Peters, and I think he had some guy named on Matt. And it was a breaking point for me. And here's what I've been going through, folks. All these years we've supported Trump. And of course, I've known all about the whole Rothschild thing. I wrote a 470-page book on it. But I was so hoping that Trump was just ignorant of what was taught in the Talmud, that was ignorant because he's around all these evangelical Zionists, that I kept hoping for the best for him.
Right.
But here was my point of just breaking, and that is, Mike, does it really matter if Trump is doing this out of ignorance or if he's willfully doing it? Because see, I kept kicking against this whole idea that Trump is a part of the like he really wants to destroy America, like he's willfully deceiving people. Like, I really kicked against that because I'm pretty good at judging people, and I was like, no, I don't think he's like really wants to destroy America. Like, I really think he loves America.
Right.
So I was on that he's just ignorant. But here's the point, Mark. At this point, it does not matter if it's ignorant or if it's willful destruction. He's doing it anyway. And I have to sit back objectively and look at what's the result, what is taking place, what are the actions, what are the policies, not what are his motives. I have to get out of the mindset of what are his motives rather than, and just look at what are the results and the policies. And when I do that, I can see this thing much more clearly than I have in the past. And I am not at this point. He's doing a lot of good things, just like Ian Carroll talked about with Candace Owens. But it's low-hanging fruit, Mark. I don't care about DEI. I don't care about women in the military. I don't, the border is a really quick fix, right?
Well,
low-hanging fruit type stuff.
Right. That's a good point. It is low-hanging fruit. The big things that got the libertarians off the couch to vote for him was the peace president. Right. Go back and look at the episodes since we started from January, or even before then when we knew he was going to win. I said that. I said he is the peace president. This is why I got off the couch and voted for him. And it's almost a slap in the face. Not that we're going to war with Iran, but we are close. And let me share the news article now. So he came out on Truth Social. He said basically that, the Houthis will no longer sink any more American ships. First thing I thought was, wait a minute. Were there American ships being sunk by these Houthi terrorists? There's no way. And of course you have to
shooting bows and arrows at our ships.
Yeah. So I thought, okay, well, when you actually go and search this, you have to sift through all of the garbage media to actually find something that's truthful. And here, let me. So I found, a USNI I've never heard of, but you know what? They seem to not be biased towards the administration or to the U.S. And one of the things that caught me here was the Houthis pushed back against the Trump administration, with a spokesman disputing President Trump's claim that the group is a threat to ships in the region. Quote, the U.S. president claims about the threat to the international navigation in the Bab al-Mandab Strait are false and misleading to international public opinion. The naval blockade declared by Yemen in support of Gaza is limited to Israel shipping until humanitarian aid is delivered to the people of Gaza in accordance with the ceasefire agreement between the Palestinian resistance and the enemy entity. The Yemeni blockade came after a 4-day grace period was granted to mediators, the Houthi spokesman said on X, by the way, which I wanted to find that. But anyway, the Trump administration's attack signals that they will use preemptive strikes rather than reactive ones, as the Biden administration did. So what's the difference? There isn't one. It was a lie. They're not sinking ships. And they didn't violate the truce at all. It wasn't until they bombed the hospital that they decided, and he's even come out and said, we don't attack American ships in that strait.
Right.
It's all about Israel for the genocide that they're doing in that region.
Right.
I know. But
And the
again,
sad thing is you got to go to, I've never even heard of this news network, but I'm going to obviously follow them now. You got to go to some place like this to get the truth.
Right. You know, and it's sad to me because the whole MAGA base initially was, look at the policy. If the policy is not working, then you have to get rid of the policy. You know, talking about the Biden administration, now we're looking at the policy from the Trump administration. You have to be willing to say the same thing and to look as critically in the same way. And they are not. You have your major voices out there like Cat Turd or Brian Cates, who are total MAGA all the way, regardless of what Trump is doing. And it's just, you're like, wow, we have gone full pendulum swing to cult-like in the other direction.
Yes, absolutely. Well, you know, it's funny because Cat Turd came out and, you know, I've followed him for a while through the Biden administration. He's been great. But now it's like he can do no wrong.
Right.
Trump can do no wrong. But the other day he did post, or maybe it was early last week, he posted he's been invited to the White House for the press thing. So, you know, obviously he's, yes. So obviously he's going to take a biased stance on that. But, and Cat Turd's never really addressed the whole Israel thing. And I don't know if it's ignorance on his part or if he's just overlooking it because he supports Trump. But also, who was it? The Wall Street, another one I follow that I think's, at first I thought he was libertarian. He's really not. He's conservative, but he's another one just shilling for Trump after all of this, especially after Trump came out and attacked Thomas Massey. And now he's supporting, who is it? He's supporting, what's his name? He's the closeted gay senator from South Carolina.
Graham.
Lindsey Graham.
Yes,
he's not closeted.
Yes, Lindsey Graham. Well, I mean, he hasn't come out and said it, but we all know the truth.
Yeah, I think we all do.
Yeah.
Well, let's shift gears here just a little bit, but not really, because now Chase Geiser, he's the guy that works at InfoWars with Alex Jones. I interacted with him briefly on a private message and said, hey, can I interview you on Israel? And he said, yes. And we were trying to make a time and he didn't follow up after that. And I think this might be why. Let's look at his understanding and Alex Jones' understanding why we're going to war. They believe it has nothing to do with the Talmud, nothing to do with zealot Zionism, no holy wars. It's all about the dollar and the trade route that China is doing. Let's listen to this and see if we can make heads or tails of it here.
China. It's ridiculous.
China. Let's see.
So a lot of people are saying that Israel's trying to get the United States into a war with Iran, but it's actually more complicated than that. The United States wants to get into a war with Iran. Here's why. So back in 1971, Nixon took us off of the gold standard because, well, we were printing more money than we had backed by gold. All of our allies called us on it. We knew we didn't have the gold to pay them, so Nixon just took us off the gold standard. But since the dollar was no longer backed by gold, we had to back it with something else. So Nixon negotiated the OPEC petrodollar, where he ensured that all the Middle Eastern nations would trade oil using US dollars, which created an artificial demand for the dollar, even though it wasn't backed by anything. This is the reason that we were able to remain the global reserve currency and protect the dollar, despite the fact that it was worthless. Decades went by, and we needed to ensure that oil would always be traded in dollars. So we got involved in coup after coup and war after war. Wars like the ones in Afghanistan, Iraq. We assassinated Gaddafi from Libya. All people who threatened to trade oil in something other than the dollar. Iran's doing the same thing today, as well as China supporting Iran because, well, they want to be the global reserve currency, not the United States. Now, since we've been applying so much pressure to China and the entire region for the course of the last 50 years or so, China has tried to establish the Belt and Road Initiative, which is something that they mean to use to undermine the dollar's global reserve currency by establishing a trade monopoly in the entire hemisphere. You can see it there on that video. Interesting enough, Bibi Netanyahu, a month before the October 7th terrorist attacks happened in Israel, announced the IMEC corridor, which is meant to go through Saudi Arabia from India and to the port of Haifa in Israel. Now, we all know what happened exactly a month later. There was this terrorist attack, what appeared to be a stand down, which Bibi Netanyahu has used to justify it, basically wiping out every breathing thing in the Gaza Strip. The reason they're committing a genocide over there? Well, it's because you can't establish a trade corridor through the port of Haifa if Haifa, like in this video, is always being bombed by terrorists. So they decided that there was no two-state solution. What they were going to do was just coax them in to commit a terrorist attack and then use that atrocity as an excuse to just annihilate and evacuate everyone from the region to secure Israel for the sake of establishing the trade route to compete with China and save the US dollar. So does Israel want a war with Iran? Absolutely. They stand to make a lot of money off of this IMEC corridor. But so does the United States. The United States wants this war with Iran because it will be a proxy war with China, which will allow us to establish the IMEC corridor and save the fake dollar for the time being and remain the global reserve currency. So ultimately, all these conflicts in the Middle East have nothing to do with democratic values or religious ideals. They have everything to do with money, money, money.
And I'll agree with that. I mean, you've
I
to a certain
partly,
extent,
partly,
you to a certain extent, you follow the money. You usually realize it has nothing to do with religion, or
Mark,
some sort of ideology. It always comes back to money.
It does, but for the Jew, it's all about money, and maybe that's a really good segue into this other video.
Now, hang on. Before you go there, I've got one thing about that video. So so Richard Nixon did not take us being Americans off the gold standard. Actually, FDR did that. He took the American economy off the gold standard. What Richard Nixon did was he took the world, or basically the trade of the different countries, off the gold standard and put the dollar. Now, Richard Nixon was never smart enough to do that on his own. He was just the president that was there. My question is, who was behind the scenes that perpetuated this? And I think also FDR at the time was being manipulated to get the United States. That was the first step. And then it took another, 30 years to then get the world off of the gold standard. Who was behind that?
Okay. Let's now look at just how the Talmudic Jew and the Zionists, the Rothschilds, look at money. And I want to show you the connection between what Chase is saying about money, but I want you to connect that with the Greater Israel Project and their overall goal to steal money from everybody. This was actually pretty good.
People honestly believe that they are the descendants of gods, that they are the chosen, that they are God's special people, that we are delusional, and that the true creator is this wisdom principle that they think of as Lucifer. That wisdom principle gave us ancient mystery school teachings, and that the enemy, which they call Adonai, the adversary, which we would call the Christian God, came to try to defeat them. Then they even take it a step further and they look at texts like the Bible and they say that where it says in the end times that God will take the money from the wicked and restore it to the just, that we as a planet are the wicked and they are the just. So this is how they justify their financial corruption. They don't believe that we deserve the money. In fact, they believe that if they did not dominate us and if they did not control us and play all these games, that we left to our own devices would destroy our planet. So in some twisted rationale, they believe they are saving the earth. They believe humans are bad for the environment. We cause pollution, so they have to reduce population. Then they seed that into movies like The Matrix, where Agent Smith says that that humans are like a virus on the planet. This is one of a variety of ways in which they will usually embed their teachings into the.
Okay, so it's the goys that are the plague on the planet. Okay, that's how they look at us. We have no soul. Okay, we're only here to serve the Jew. We're only here to give them our money so that they can manage the world, because they are God's chosen and they alone have wisdom and insight from God.
Now, is this Talmudic?
Yes.
Okay.
This is
Yes.
getting
Not-
really deep in the whole, Kabbalah and
Yes.
stuff like that.
Not necessarily the Torah Jews, but the
No,
No.
but the Torah Jews are like this percent. Like all the other factions of Judaism all view the Talmud as inspired, if not even more inspired than the Tanakh. So this is the world set or the worldview in which these people look at. And so when you're studying globalism and you're looking at depopulation, you're looking at replacement migration, you're looking at the corruption and the wokeness, and then you start studying the Rothschilds and the Bilderberg group, and you see that the majority of these families are Jewish. And that is where Alex Jones lost his debate with Nick Fuentes when they were talking about the Bilderberg group. And Alex is like, oh, look at all these groups at Bilderberg. And he goes, well, wait a second. When we look at those 3,000 families that pretty much finance this entire thing, they're all Jewish.
Mhm.
Why is that? Because it goes back to what this guy was just saying. This is their religion. They are here to dominate you, and they are taking over our government. And we have a president of the United States, whether he's ignorant or he's willfully doing it. What he is doing is so wrong, is so bad. And if you're a Q person, you need to throw that coffee cup out the window at this point and grow a pair and resist this, because Trump
Now,
is destroying our First Amendment on this very topic.
so now, and we say Jew, and just so we understand, the term Jew actually came from the Babylonian exiles, right? From the Babylonians called them Jews as a term because they were from Judea.
Mhm.
So for us to even say that these are Jews, and I hear this a lot, it is kind of funny because technically they're not, they're Russians, right?
Yeah, they're Khazarians.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
So
they
they're
had
not from Judea at all. They
No.
are Russian descent or Khazarians.
Actually, Turkish Khazarian consent, around the Turkish area at the time.
modern day Turkey.
Modern day
where-
Turkey. Yeah.
where they
Yeah.
come from.
So they're Turkish.
And
Okay.
they were very
Oh.
close to the Ukrainian area, which also brings in the
Yeah.
Russia-Ukrainian conflict as well, because there's a whole lot of history there that nobody understands, but
Yeah.
Putin does. And
Yeah.
that was his point when he was doing his interview with Tucker. Tucker has no concept and no idea of what all of that history is, but Putin does.
Now, did you get a chance, Mark, to see the Candace Owens, Ian Carroll interview?
No, I did not.
Here's
Are you
one.
about to share pieces
Here's
of that?
one clip. It was a very long
Great.
interview, and I'm just I found a clip here and there. But on this topic, here,
Hey, you're doing a dual screen.
In every way, not
Is
just
there a way
politically
to
blackmail, but also just culturally and dividing.
is there a way to
families.
pick one screen?
What makes
Yeah.
the soul of America?
There we
And
go.
they intentionally introduced it everywhere. And there is I'm sorry, but a direct corollary from when they took the Bible out of the classroom. That was all very intentional. Understand, you should go back and learn in history who pushed for that to happen. You have the 60s generation. The reason the CIA was doing this was because they wanted to crush Christian culture. I mean, explicitly, there's a guy. What is his name? I think it's Al Goldstein. But you gotta pull up this Wikipedia, Skylar. If you could pull up Al Goldstein on Wikipedia, explicitly said, like, we created pornography because we hate Christ. This is the literal quote. It's so crazy to read this. Here it is. It's, quote, the only reason that Jews are in pornography is that we think that Christ sucks. Catholicism sucks. We don't believe in authoritarianism. Pornography thus becomes a way of defiling Christian
Except they're
culture.
authoritarian.
And as it penetrates the very heart of the American mainstream and is no doubt consumed by those very same wasps, its subversive character becomes more charged, end quote. I mean, that is just unbelievable. Like, whoa.
100%.
Like, it's like, take it to the bank. We created pornography because we hate Christ. And it's on Wikipedia. This is not like a conspiracy theory. And so this guy says this, and you go to yourself, okay, everything that is happening is antichrist, right? So we know that as Catholics, you're not supposed, you keep your families together. You're supposed to save your virginity. We don't believe in birth control.
So, I mean, yeah, go ahead.
So one thing I want to say about that they took the Bible out of the schools. The Christians allowed that to happen. Public school, government schools removed the Bible because it's government schools, and Christians allowed it. And like I said, I hadn't seen the whole thing, so I don't know what she was talking about there.
Yeah,
but don't think for a second.
I didn't really care about that. I mean, if they make minor errors along the way, I'm looking at the bigger picture, and the bigger picture is that, and when I say Jew, I'm not talking about a race. I'm not sitting there saying I hate a race of Jews. That is not what I believe. I've never believed
there's no such
that.
thing, but
I don't teach that in my book. You won't find a page, a sentence, a quote from me ever saying that. When I say Jew, I'm talking about someone who believes that the Talmud is inspired scripture and they need to live out that life and of control, just like I would be against a Muslim who thinks that the Quran is giving him license to have Sharia law and to control Christians. So whenever I'm saying something negative about Jews, that is the context, and do not take me out of context. Okay.
Right.
So they're pointing out, Candace is pointing out correctly, that they understand they have a mandate to corrupt the goy, the countries, wherever they are supposed to corrupt it.
Right.
And we can shift topics, but I've got another one where this rabbi is gleeful that the countries of the Gentiles are getting watered down. And why? It's because they're the ones in charge of the replacement migration. They know how to destroy countries, and they're the ones that are doing it. But anyway, we're kind of talking a lot about Israel, as I always like to. Maybe we can shift.
Hey, it drives subs, so whatever. Trust me, my economic stuff I don't think's driving subs, so we're okay.
Now, here it is. Okay, let me just go ahead and play this.
Though I will say, last week's episode with Eric Rice was great. 2 hours. We had a great time.
Oh yeah. Oh, we had a great time after the show.
I know. I had to leave.
That's where we started talking about Trump and how we are both on the same page in that.
I had to bail after 2 hours. Sorry, but I had a good time.
All right, let me play this one. See if I can get the other screen here too. Okay.
Can't really argue that the Goyim are going to be annihilated. That's not really an option for all the Nevuahs, all the prophecies. And not only Goyim as individuals, you could say that we broke down their nationalities.
They broke down their nationalities.
Running around. No, as nations even. As Goyim, they're gone. Their personality, as they exist if they atzmam, as they would exist independently of Klal Yisrael, they don't exist. They're done. In modern terminology, they call it cultural genocide. Can't really argue that the Goyim are going to be annihilated. That's not really an option for all the Nevuahs, all the prophets.
So this guy is gleeful. He's clearly saying that they are the ones that have infiltrated the Goy countries and have taken away their distinctions, right? With replacement migration, really, is how they've been doing it. And these people, that kind of guy right there is sick, literally sick in his head.
Now he said from the prophecy. What is he talking about?
And here's the problem, Mark. There's no prophecy like that, but he feels that he's supposed to be fulfilling that. Now he might be looking at something in the Old Testament where like the real Jews that were connected to real 12 tribes were called to go and destroy the Canaanites or something like that. And maybe in his perverted, sick mind, and that's pretty much how they think. They think that they still have that mandate to rule the world. probably Isaiah chapter 2,
Yeah.
where they think that they're going to rule the world from literal Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you're looking at that, it's kind of like, no, that's not how the New Testament understands that ruling. I mean, the church is ruling from Zion. The church is Zion, and we rule the nations through the gospel of peace. But in their mindset, no, we are going to rule the world from literal Jerusalem. And that's why Trump calls Jerusalem the eternal city. He is a Zionist, man.
Well, that's why I was thinking that he said prophecy, but really what he was looking at is the Old Testament mandate from God to go into that and remove the people so that they could have their chosen. And it had nothing to do with prophecy. And obviously he's taken it out of context. But I think that's also where the Mishnah comes from, because you're talking about this oral tradition that's been handed down year over year, and it's been manipulated and twisted. Because you look at like Jesus' time when he says, "You've heard it said, but I say," well, obviously he's saying that oral tradition was wrong, and this is what God says. Well, think about that. That was 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
The twistedness has gone even beyond that, to where this guy that practices doesn't even understand the difference between what is prophecy and what God's mandate was. What, 4,000 years ago?
It gets even more screwed up when you look at the vast majority of these people are Khazarians. Like, they're not even connected to the 12 tribes. They found the Talmud. They converted to the Talmud in about the 700s, 800s, and they saw how wicked it was. And they were already a wicked culture. And they're like, this is awesome. Like, if we can be these people and we can control the world, this is kind of a cool thing. Like, this is on par with the Quran, but we don't have to convert to that. We'll just stick with this. And it's just been wicked ever since.
I think you mean they found the Torah.
No, the Talmud. Did I not say that? No, they found the Talmud.
Yes.
Yeah, they wanted the Talmud. The Talmud is,
that's right. The Talmud is the one that's all twisted. Yes.
Yeah.
You're right. What I was making point to, Denise, was that he's thinking of the conquest of when they came into the promised land. He's calling it prophecy, but it wasn't. And anyway, that was my point, is he's getting it twisted.
Yeah, I know. And of course they reject Christ. And so they wanted and still would like to fulfill the Pharisees and the Sadducees' idea of a literal kingdom of Christ on earth, you know?
Yep.
So,
and your evangelical Zionist loves that too, because that is their concept of the kingdom as well. And, you know, with Gentiles being circumcised in the millennium and everybody offering up animal sacrifices and a temple. I mean, man, that is not Christianity, people. You know, if you're in dispensationalism and you come to the grips that your eschatology says that Gentiles need to be circumcised and offer up animal sacrifices before they can approach a physical Jesus on a physical throne, and you're still in that and not questioning that system, there's something really wrong.
Well, yeah, it's total ignorance. They don't read the Bible. They listen to, you know, they sit in those mega churches and listen to what Hagee says, or, you know, whoever, you know, Paula White or whatever.
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. We're only 30 minutes in. This is my last one. I've got to play Stu Peters. He's my boy. He's my man. All right. And man, this is what men need in our country. They need righteous indignation. And that's pretty much what I'm going to entitle this.
Israel.
Hang on a second. See if I can. All right, where'd it go?
Where'd it go?
Well, I lost it. This isn't even my.
Oh, you're on mine. No, you're on mine.
I'm on yours.
You're on mine.
I hit profile. No, I'm on mine. All right. You there, Mark?
I'm here.
Okay. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Well,
did you bookmark it?
I can't find it. No, and it's not popping up here fast. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Oh, I love this.
if you give up all hope, at what point? I mean, at what point? And I'm not saying this in any kind of look. I'm being watched very closely.
I'm not encouraging you, and I want to stop. Hold on, stop.
I love this.
Because there's a lot of people on X and in other social media platforms that accuse me of doing this guy that tells everybody to give up hope. I'm not doing that. I'm saying that your hope is in the wrong place. You're hoping for Donald Trump to secretly be working on some version of 6 million D chess is fake. And as long as strong guys like you are watered down and weakened by putting Trump in like this messiah kind of form and worshiping him or hoping or planning, trusting the plan, it's neutering the most patriotic, pissed off patriots that our country has to offer. And that's what pisses me off, because it has you going, hold on, I'm going to chill on my patriotism for a minute while I just trust the plan and hope and pray that Donald Trump is going to do something. Let me tell you what he is doing.
Watch this.
He's building a gold statue of himself in Israel after he bombs the out of those kids and builds Trump Gaza atop their bones. That's what this guy's doing.
Yeah. Love it.
Judge a man by his fruit. The fruit rotten.
Damn, that was good.
Bless.
I love it. Now that
so he was shutting that dude down, I guess, because the guy was supporting.
if I could just work on his adjectives. But damn, it's just so good.
Yeah.
I love it.
Building yeah, I mean that's
Okay, that's my Israel rant. We got half a show.
That's
left.
what's going on. All right, so
That is what's
we'll
going
get into some political some economic stuff. How about that?
Sure.
So I found this early in the week and I thought it was great, explaining the whole tariff situation and what's going on. This Tanvi Ratna. Let's see if I can zoom in. There we go. I saw this earlier in the week and it has literally gone viral after that. And it's interesting. She's interesting. And I may ask her to come on and do just talking about politics, because she really went into the Trump tariffs. She says Trump's new tariffs aren't a trade tweak. They're the first move in a full spectrum of reset. 2.9 trillion in debt matures this year for the United States. And that is the big thing that I think a lot of people and even myself missed, was start with the debt. 9.2 must be refinanced in 2025. If it rolled into a 10-year bond, every 1 basis point. So what he's doing with these tariffs is he's driving everyone out of the stock market. Where are they going to put their money? They're going to put it in bonds. If rolled into 10-year bonds, and once that happens, the bond rate goes down. Right now, the bond rate's, I think it's about 4.2%, which is pretty high. Every 1 basis point drop in the rate saves approximately $1 billion per year. So a 0.5 drop would save $500 billion in the debt as they move it, to handle it. Lower yields free up physical room. Without them, core spending gets crowded out. What that means is now it gives them room for core spending rather than all of the money going to just pay off the interest on the debt. Now it frees up some room to be able to spend. I think they actually raised the debt ceiling to 4 trillion, 2 trillion, something like that. Anyway, she says, how do you push yields down with sticky inflation and a cautious Fed? The Fed doesn't want to doesn't want to lower interest rates because there's still some inflation going on. So manufacturing uncertainty, sweep in with tariffs, spook the market, triggers risk off, money exits the stock market and floods into the treasury. So it's a bigger thing than just Trump. On the surface, he's saying this is good for manufacturing. And I honestly believe long-term it will be. And this is where she goes into Right here, Doge is doing a good job, and I think if they can pull off, she's speculating that they could get $1 trillion by the end of September 25. I don't know if that's true. That's a lot of money, but maybe. I hope so. They're doing a great job. She says with this savings, the big again, I don't know if we're going to get that savings, but okay, great. It does give a little more room to the federal government. But here's the problem: American manufacturers. So you ramp this tariff thing up. The problem is that it's going to take American manufacturing time to facilitate the increase in demand from internal to our country. So you're going to see probably prices go through the roof for the rest of this year and maybe into the beginning of 2026.
Right.
So you're going to feel that inflation a little bit. But then after they ramp up, I think it'll come down. My big exception to this, but I thought it was interesting of how they're driving money out of the stock market and into these bonds is because of the debt refinancing. It has nothing else to do with it other than there's $9 trillion coming due, and they need to do something about it.
Right.
Honestly, I think the biggest problem I see with U.S. manufacturing is the big thing is the minimum wage. Now, granted, most manufacturers pay above minimum wage, but when you have a corporate tax of 35%, and Trump hasn't even talked about lowering the corporate tax. There's no talk about lowering or removing the minimum wage. And those are the two big things that hamper American manufacturing, is that we pay too many taxes and we have to pay a minimum wage for work that maybe technically doesn't even deserve that. And I think the federal minimum wage is $7, but if you're manufacturing in a certain state, that could be up to $14 an hour. I think Seattle's at $17 an hour. So I don't know that we're going to see with these tariffs, if it lasts for a while and American manufacturing gets up and running, I don't know that we're going to even see a cost to us, a savings, even after it gets ramped up, because of the fact it is so expensive to manufacture anything in the United States compared to other countries that I don't think we're going to see it. But
right.
You know what, Mark, real quick, you mentioned taxes. I'm at the point in my life that if I don't hear Trump really, really soon talk about getting rid of the Fed and getting rid of the private Rothschild bank and printing our own damn currency, I just may not pay taxes. And I don't give a rat's ass if the IRS is watching. I may have to find some patriot site and figure out legally if I can pull that and roll the dice, because my conscience is sick.
With taxes are funding.
Going over there bombing freaking kids. If I see another kid with his brains melting out of his head and realizing my money's going towards that crap, Trump, why should I pay any more taxes? If I'm paying for this guy and I voted for this guy, I want to get back to our own currency, and I don't want to be funding all of these wars, Israel's wars. And I'm more pissed off about that and my money going towards that than I was Biden's woke crap.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like two sides of one coin that I'm just getting disgusted with. We have to have some kind of tax system where if you want to fund that with your taxes, go for it.
Yeah.
But
well, I will say at least Trump is putting the conversation out there of removing capital gains tax on crypto, removing tax on tips, removing having to pay income tax on Social Security. At least the conversation is out there, and people are beginning to see that is the biggest deal. And Mike, I'll tell you,
low-hanging fruit, dealing with symptoms, as you know.
No, I know, but I think you have to do. Look, Ron Paul came out in 2008 swinging for the fences and people just could not relate to it. He said, we needed to get rid of Social Security. It's a Ponzi scheme. We need to get rid of the Federal Reserve. We need to get rid of the federal income tax. And people just, their heads exploded because they can't relate to that. And I think the way Trump is walking into it, and trust me, in 2012, when Ron Paul ran again, he realized that, oh, I can't talk like that because people aren't ready for those conversations. And I think that's what, at least being someone that back then I was, and I also pushed that hard. I'm like, taxes are crazy. You don't need taxes. And people are like, well, what about the roads? It always goes back to the roads when you talk about taxes. But I think you have to walk into it. And so you have to say, okay, well, let's get rid of this. It's kind of like, let's get rid of the Department of Education, and then we'll move to the bigger ones and the next one. And then maybe we can reach a point where we'll get rid of like the EPA, and we'll get rid of some of these other departments that should have never happened anyway. But I think you have to step into it. But so I don't think you can go all out because people just cannot relate to that. Their head explodes. I mean, you think about it. You can go throw a rock at an American, and if you told them, if we get rid of taxes, let's just get rid of all taxes, they lose their mind. Well, what about the roads? Well, what about all the things that people need? I mean, because they can't imagine it without it. But to get to your point about taxes, constitutionally, it is a violation of the law of the land for federal taxes. Absolutely. Now, there are people that have won in the courts and they never pay taxes again. But the majority of people that have taken on the federal government on this issue have lost.
Okay. Stu Peters has an advertising person, or he advertises this company that makes the claim every one of our students, everyone that has gone through our program has not been audited, has not had to pay taxes, has not had a lien on their house, their car, anything. And if that's a 100%, and I'll follow up on that, but I mean, I'm not quite there yet, but we are having that discussion at this point in our marriage. Like, we are disgusted with where our money's going. And Trump isn't any better. In fact, he's kind of worse when he's being Israel's bitch. And I hate to use that language, but I mean, that's just what the guy ends turning out to be.
Right. No, I absolutely agree. I think every American that has done that, regardless of whether they've gotten away with it or gone to jail, are patriots without question. We talk about the gold bug last week, Peter Schiff. His father spent half his life in prison, federal prison, because of tax evasion. He was right. He was an American patriot. And Schiff, points out all the things that his father taught him. I 100% agree. It's just like you said, you're going to roll the dice. You're going to take your chance.
Yeah.
And I hope you win. I hope every American wins.
I'm not there yet, IRS. But when I'm ready, I'm going to kick your ass. Okay, let's answer a question here. I don't have my glasses, but I think the gist of it is, what was the document that I had been talking about where they're planning World War III? It's called the Albert Pike Letter. All right, and Albert Pike was a 33 or 32nd degree Mason. They were all into Satanism. The letter is attributed to him, but there's a lot of debate whether he actually wrote it, the date it was written, and people get all caught up in that debate, and they miss the actual philosophy, theology, and war game plan of the actual letter. I don't care if Albert Pike wrote it or if he didn't write it. I can see clearly that letter plans out different world wars, and they plan World War III to be between Israel and the Muslim world. And once that war happens, it will deplete the nations financially, which now Israel can go in with their central banks and have more control and more debt, right? And they fund both sides of the war, so they're making money that way as well. And then they're gonna realize that this is gonna create a religious vacuum the document says, and that they hope to fill that with transhumanism, technocracy, and the worship of the state. And as a preterist, I know for a fact that if World War III happens the way they want it to happen and the way it seems to be playing out right now, I know for a fact that that letter is 100% accurate. It will create a religious void because guess what? All these Zionist evangelicals, you're not going to get raptured.
Amen.
And your whole faith
Is
has
humble.
been in this rapture thing. You don't care if Israel's killing Christians over there because your faith is in flying off the earth. So when that doesn't happen, your Christianity is going, your form of Christianity, which isn't really Christianity, unless you're trusting in Christ's righteousness because you're a sinner, it's going to crumble. And you are going to have a religious crisis. And you will be tempted to go with the flow. Or there's going to be a reformation in the area of eschatology, and Christianity is going to take on another form with preterism. And that is what's really going to happen. But
that's a good point. And also, they didn't factor in, they plan all this and the crumbling of the central banks, and they didn't factor in digital gold and the fact that Bitcoin is coming in, through that back door to make not only countries sovereign, but also individuals. So the digital,
that Bitcoin thing may be the whole, because in the past we've been all like, we got to print our own currency like that. Like that was the solution, right? Because I guess I'm just old school. Like that's just how my mind thinks. But you and Eric Rice, with the whole Bitcoin, like that might be the avenue that we need to go through. But again, as long as the government, though, isn't controlling it, because once the government can control it, we're in the same place.
Yeah.
We were.
Yeah, and that was kind of my point. I don't know. We talked about it about 3 episodes ago. It wasn't, and that was kind of what I wanted to get into with Eric was, there's other proof of work cryptos that are being done that you have to mine. And I think that's the shift is, okay, fine. So the BlackRocks of the world and the US federal government begins to buy up all the Bitcoin so that they can manipulate the price. Well, that's fine. Then we just come up with another solution. It's just like on the black market today. There's a black market going on that uses currencies or some sort of money outside of the dollar. I mean, Russia's using Bitcoin, but it's always been that way. And I think, humanity figures out a way around the elephant, you know what I mean? To figure out how to stay sovereign.
Right. I think all of this talk, you talk about the New World Order, you can talk about the Albert Pike letter, which is interestingly enough, in the Albert Pike letter goes into how they are planning on ways to poison us through our food, through the things we put on our skin, through the air that we breathe, in order to depopulate and in order to bring in this transhumanism kind of thing that they're trying to usher in, right? All of this seems to me to be the modern day Tower of Babel. And we know what God is ultimately going to do.
That's right. And that's a good point. I'm glad you said that because to me, I don't worry about those things.
Right.
Because God's not going to allow that. My faith says that there's no way God's going to allow that. So I don't even go there.
Yeah. I don't.
Is it going to get bad to a point?
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But at some point, he's going to cut it off.
Right.
And that's going to be it. And it's going to be something we're not going to expect.
Mark, that's where your faith needs to be.
Yes.
Not that it can't happen like a Q cult person, like, oh, everything's going to get great. Oh. No, God over time, he chastens the church through the wicked taking control and purifies the church, causes the church to call out and repent.
Right.
And then the cycle turns, then the church grows. And becomes dominant and actually infiltrates the culture and makes the culture better. But everything goes through cycles.
It recapitulates
through
history. Always has, always will. And yes, there was a comment about God always allowing a remnant? He always will. Always.
That's correct. And that's what keeps it going, unless you're a partial preterist. And then eventually what happens is we all become believers, and then Christ actually returns, and then earth becomes Eden again.
Right.
Speaking of partial preterists, did you see Andrew?
There may be some partial preterists in the chat, so I wanted to throw that out there.
Okay,
hey, I was a partial preterist for a long time. So.
Oh yeah, we all were in our infancy.
That's right. You evolve.
Yes. When I was a baby and I was drinking milk, I was a partial preterist. And inconsistent.
Now I eat steak.
That's right, and we do.
We're
on the carnivore diet. We try. Okay. So where was I going? Oh, partial preterism. Okay, so Andrew Isker was on the Tucker Carlson show. And of course, he's had Doug Wilson on the Tucker Carlson show.
Mm-hmm.
And Isker did a really good job. Now, Don Preston and I already critiqued it, but I don't want to get into the whole too deep in the weeds in this. But, he did a really good job of communicating to Tucker and the audience that Jesus is the Israel of God, and that Jesus is simply recapitulating Israel's history, something I've taught a million times. It's not like it's new, but he did a really good job of developing it. And if there's a lot of dispensationalists out there listening, then that was great. It's something that a lot of people needed to hear. So I am happy about that. Even if it's partial preterism getting out there, it's a gateway drug to the truth.
Yeah, there's actually a book. I gave it to my pastor. He did a thing on Israel. He didn't go deep in the weeds, but I gave him. It's a book called The Israel of God: Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow, and it is awesome by Palmer Robertson. I'll put it in the link. It's great. I gave it to him. He's like, "Look, don't expect this back."
That's an all-millennial work.
It is, but it's good in the fact that it takes someone that is a Zionist, or at least doesn't understand, and it walks them through rather than just throws them into this thing. It moves them in that direction. And Gary North actually told me about it years ago when I was still drinking milk. But it's a good book. I don't take that away. All right, I got one more thing I want to share. I don't know if you follow the guy Adam Media. I think you may have seen him. Anyway, he did let me
pull him up. I'll tell you. Adam Media.
Yeah, this guy right here.
I can't read him on.
This guy right here, Adam Media. Anyway, President Malia has declassified documents confirming Hitler had fled to Argentina after World War II, which there was speculation for years on this.
Mm-hmm.
And he shared this video, which I thought was interesting.
Most people know that Hitler lived out his days in. People know this story and who have studied the subject know that Adolf Hitler didn't kill himself in a bunker in Berlin as the Red Army closed in. I think that's, we all know that was a fabricated story, or if you watch the show, you probably understand that. Hitler actually fled Germany weeks before that using a group of underground tunnels that led to an airstrip. And that airstrip was flown. He was flown from Berlin out. It took submarines, or multiple submarines that were used, U-boats that were then sent to Argentina. In other words, Hitler lived for nearly 2 decades more in Argentina, along with vast numbers of the Third Reich. Well, now Argentinian President Javier Milei has just ordered the release of all remaining documents on all of those Nazis who fled Germany and moved to Argentina after World War II. Basically, it was almost like a second base operations in Argentina. If you're not familiar with that, like basically the Third Reich operated out of Argentina and Germany. And many of them, including Adolf Hitler, lived in Argentina well after 1945. Most people know that Hitler lived out his days in Bariloche, Argentina, until he died there in the mid-1960s. Yes, you can read the CIA documents about this. The FBI documents also about sightings of Hitler in this area. They knew about it. Of course they knew about it. It was largely facilitated, I think it's safe to say, by the United States and its allies.
There you
Operation
go.
Paperclip, anybody?
Mm-hmm.
Quid pro quo?
Also, if you look into this, the skull that is held in Russia that was supposedly the remains of Adolf Hitler with a bullet wound in it is female.
Yeah.
So when you look for proof that Hitler did in fact kill himself in the bunker, you are going to find a lot of dead ends.
Yeah. And all you need to read, you can read a great book on this called The
Stalin
Grey Wolf. It's a great book. There's many books written about this now. But yeah, the skull, the fragments, they ran the DNA tests on it. And the Soviets allowed them to do this testing. And even Stalin openly talked about that Hitler lived, that he was not there. So Stalin even knew about it. It's widely known in Argentina, by the way, well known, that Hitler sired 2 children while he lived in Argentina.
2 girls. And do you know who they speculate one of those was? Or at least a granddaughter? Angela Merkel. I saw that recently. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw that too. They took her picture and this daughter and made the circle. I thought it was a joke, but now that makes sense. All right, I got one last thing to close us out with, which I thought this is just hilarious. Now, this is these are the early 20s. They don't have a clue. They're ignorant. I'm not going to call them stupid. I'm going to blame public schools on this, and I'm going to blame the public government. Yeah, the government schools are the problem, and Soros feeding social media, and these young kids are listening to this, but they don't have a clue of what's going on. So here it is. This guy's interviewing. Donald Trump is trying to repeal parts of the Constitution. All right, hang on.
Take over.
What are we protesting today?
Donald Trump.
What's Donald Trump doing that we're protesting?
Well, he is fucking up the American democracy right now and trying to kind of repeal a bunch of shit in the Constitution, like, rights and liberties. So,
is there anything in specific that he's?
Well, the First
I don't have all
Amendment-
the information, but
I don't have all the information.
What are you against?
Personally, I'm against tyrants. I'm against tyranny. That's what I'm against.
What is that?
Somebody who's coming in and trying to take over the country and get rid of the rules and regulations that have existed for centuries to keep us citizens safe.
And who do you think is doing that?
Currently, Donald Trump and Elon Musk and all of his cabinet members.
Why Elon Musk, though?
The Department of Government Efficiency, he was put in charge of a department that doesn't even exist before this, and he's not even an American.
Who's not an American?
Elon Musk.
Okay,
He's from South Africa. I don't know if you knew that.
How do you feel about Donald Trump?
I think that he deserves to die.
You should what?
Die.
Okay.
That's how I
just
feel.
wait. This other guy's even better.
Who do you want to run America?
The people, preferably.
You want the people to run America?
Like a democracy should be. Yes.
Democracy.
Do you feel like
There's
the
that
people
word.
voted
They
for
love
him?
that word.
I think the people were fooled.
Fooled by who?
Him.
How?
I don't.
It's a false consciousness.
It's a what?
It's a false consciousness.
What do you mean by that?
Okay, so the.
Can I see your sign?
Can you see it?
No, I'm sitting right here.
To the camera.
No, to the camera, brother.
I'm talking to you.
But I'm interviewing. I got a mic.
I don't care about that.
You decided to
I'm
talk.
here as an individual.
Individual.
I'm here as an individual.
Okay.
All people.
Okay, well, I
Look
want
at
to
this
see the
guy's
sign.
sign.
If you have a sign.
Read the sign.
Okay, all right. What's the sign say? What does the sign say? Hold on,
He
brother.
doesn't even want to show
What
it
does the
You go out of your
because
way.
it's ridiculous.
All people are children
How about that?
of the earth.
Yeah, all people are children of the earth. Can you disagree with that? Can you disagree with
No, I
that?
can't do
So confused.
And that guy's canceling out my vote. That's what just irritates me so much. How is that allowed?
Confused.
Yeah, that's the ignorance we're dealing with, man.
Oh boy.
Hey,
Elon Musk.
I couldn't find it, but in Candace Owens' interview with Ian Carroll, they did talk about Musk. Did you get a chance to see that?
No. I'm going to go back because we'll talk
Well,
about that.
there wasn't anything new,
Oh,
but
okay.
because of their platforms, a lot more people are kind of understanding some of the criticisms of Musk. The main one is, how does this guy have so much time to run all of these companies? And he's tweeting like 24 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
And, they just kind of gave the idea that has been floated around for a while now that Musk is just kind of a government front man, and the government kind of runs a lot of his stuff. And the real criticism is this, Mark. We've studied technocracy, we've studied transhumanism, and it is wicked and it is evil. But there is this idea that, well, as Christians, we, just like Bitcoin or anything, like, we need to be ahead of the technology so that we can counter it, right? And that's kind of the whole philosophy behind the whole bioweapon thing. But in my mind, there has to be a line. There has to be a line that is drawn that says, you know what? If wicked people want to go that route, they can. But we have to stop here because this has become so unethical at this point.
Yeah.
And I don't see Musk as one of those guys that I would even
not at all.
That I would trust, even having that philosophy that, like, we need the good guys to be in charge of this really bad, technology or whatever, because Musk isn't. I mean, I get it. They tried to turn one of his boys into a girl, and I believe that he is awake, but the guy's not a Christian. He has no moral compass at all. I wouldn't be putting all my eggs in the Musk basket, is what I'm saying.
No, absolutely. I think as Christians, you should never put your eggs in one person anyway. But look at what he's done. Look at his character. Look, okay, he's got 14 kids. He obviously, sleeps around and whatever. I think that's his biggest fault. If you want to look at it like that. But like you said, he's not a Christian. So what does he care? I think he's an innovator. I think he's the best innovator we've had in the 20th century. I think he's doing some of the best things to move us technologically into the future. I mean, this man created a rocket that could actually go up and come back down. He's created this neurological thing that eventually will help people see. And walk.
That's always the bait, though. That's always the bait that the technocrats do. They come up with a technology, they sell it as something it's going to be good for you, but ultimately its design is to control you. Like, great that we have a camera.
Yeah. A lot of people
because when that guy mugs that lady with the purse, we're going to be able to find him. Instead
of Minority Report,
to be able to control society.
There's a fine line here, and who knows what'll happen in the future. I'm just saying that I don't see any evilness in Trump, or not evilness, malicious, bad motives, anything like that. I just don't see it. Hey, before we close, though, I do want to throw this out. Should we do should we start doing a Paula White little episode every time before we close to see what this woman's doing?
Oh, man.
I think we're gonna have to.
Why would Trump even do that? It's just so.
We're gonna have to do a bit on her. I think every episode we're gonna have to start finding things.
You know what? Here's my fantasy. My fantasy is that these poor Q people were kind of right. All right, that would be great, but I don't think it is. But my fantasy is that Trump is like got his friends and he's watching Paula White videos, and they're just laughing at like, we had to do this because there's so many idiots out there that we couldn't have got voted in, and look at and they're just laughing. But
yes.
But instead, I hope that he's not like calling her. Well, Paula White, what do you think about the Middle East? Should we go to war? Well,
God, I hope not.
He came down and he told me. And then she starts speaking. We need to go to war, Mr. President. I hope.
We hope that's not it. All right, so I'll start digging. We're gonna have to do a clip a week now.
Yes. All right. Well, I've got my Revelation study with the other guys here coming up, and we're in Revelation chapter 10. So I'll be doing that next. But we're a little over, so I better get hopping.
All right.
Mike,
you guys have a good week. Denise, always good to see you, Mike, brother.
And we probably need to change the title of our show, Talking God and Politics.
I know.
And Israel and the Talmud.
I'll just start putting it in quotes.
All right. We'll see you
I'll
next
have to
week,
change
brother.
the logo and everything. All right. See you guys.
All right, bye.
Bye.